Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Michelle Wyndham-West. You probably remember me from the research. I teach at OCAD University in downtown Toronto. I'm also an adjunct professor in the Department of Health, Aging and Society at McMaster University. Normally, I would hold a feedback session for the findings of the research in person, but unfortunately, due to COVID-19, I'm not able to do so. So I'm offering this video and slides as the next best thing. So I've tried to structure the presentation as a conversation, so to let you know the data that has been collected, how we've analyzed that data, and we'd be really pleased to have your feedback. I've included my email on one of the last slides, so please email me and let me know what we've gotten right, what we've gotten wrong, if I've missed anything, if we need to add anything. And I look very much forward to hearing from you, and I'll pass it over now to Jim Dunn.
Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for taking the time to watch this video. I'm really happy to be with you. As Michelle said, my name is Jim Dunn, and I'm a professor at McMaster University in the Department of Health, Aging and Society. And Michelle and I have been working on this project together, and one of the reasons we decided to do it was because of our mutual interest in housing and aging. And I've been working on housing issues for a long time in Hamilton and elsewhere. And our main purpose was to try to understand the housing experiences of lower income older adults living in Hamilton. We know that this is a group that has really important housing needs, and they're not well understood already. So we wanted to identify the needs of community members regarding their experiences of housing instability, and mainly so that we could inform policy solutions going forward. We want someone to take this information and do something with it to make it easier for people to get into affordable housing and maintain it. So it's an example of community-based research. And we recruited and got in contact with the participants through the City of Hamilton Housing Department, which is City Housing Hamilton, and also the Central Library Branch. It was based on 12 months of field work in downtown Hamilton that Michelle led, and that's why you already know her and why you're seeing me for the first time. And that was conducted between 2019 and 2020, and continued even through the pandemic, which was really great. And we thank you for those of you who participated in that. We did one-on-one interviews in person or over the phone, and as some of you will remember, we had to use iPad and Samsung tablets to give voice with videos and photos, and also to keep a diary of housing experience. And so this is really rich data for us, and it gives us a really good insight into people's lives and their housing experiences. So in terms of the participants who worked with us on this project, we were really grateful for their participation. We had 10 who identified as female and 7 who identified as male. The ages were between 62 and 76. And we had a very diverse group in terms of race and ethnicity, which is good because we heard from lots of different types of people, and that was really our objective. The majority of participants had some form of secondary or post-secondary education. And in terms of who we approached and the interest in our study, we had ultimately 17 people who participated in the study, who took part. 26 expressed some interest, and for whatever reason, we didn't end up having any data collection from them. And then we had 19 who consented. And in order to compensate people for their time and their generosity with us, we gave them a grocery store gift card to show our appreciation and just our gratitude for the knowledge that we shared, because it's really important to the project. So overall, there were 3 major themes that were identified that came out of the interviews. And the first was around experiences of housing instability and homelessness. The second was around belonging and inclusion. And the third was around the challenges of COVID-19 and especially around social isolation. And now I'm going to pass it over to Michelle to give you some more details on some of the examples of those particular themes that we identified.
So we're at theme number 1, which is housing instability and homelessness. So at your right, there's a picture of a social housing building in progress of being built in downtown Hamilton. And one of the participants was lucky to secure a spot in this building. And this was taken in early winter of 2020. And so he was very excited to have secured this spot. So included this in his tablet photographs for me to see where he was going to be moving into. So in terms of housing pathways, participants talked about how thankful and happy they were to be living in city housing. So Alice, she talked about in her diary entry, her diary on the tablet, and this is her quote, "City housing has given us back our self-respect because they respect us as real people, and we pay them back by paying our rent in a timely fashion and treating the premises with respect and care." So you'll see to the left, there's a photograph of a common area in a city housing building, and there's a Christmas tree, which is decorated for the season, as well as a very large fish tank, which can be used year round. And this is a really popular spot for participants and residents to gather, and it's where I did a lot of recruiting as well pre-COVID. So what came as one of the surprises in the research for us was the number of participants who had experienced homelessness in old age. So I have two quotes here, which describe this experience well. So Isabel speaks about homelessness might not happen immediately, but it's homelessness that haunts you. And George talked about primarily the biggest hurdles to overcome were the verification of my homelessness. I had to prove that I was in dire straits before they could apply the paperwork. So in addition to experiencing homelessness in older age, rent evictions were also a common story amongst participants who had rented in the private sector before securing a spot in city housing. So here's a quote from Alice about her experience of a rent eviction. She said, "It wasn't too bad in the beginning, but once it went into new management, it was money, money, money. They had no cause for eviction. My rent was paid on time. I kept my apartment as clean as I could." Participants also talked about the importance of community supports in their housing trajectories and their housing journeys. So Mary spoke about the assistance that she received when she had been homeless for a short period of time before she secured her spot in city housing. So she said, "I worked with a girl from St. Matthews who was absolutely amazing. She helped me fill out the paperwork with finding a new place and getting my stuff together so I could move, and supplied my first week of groceries." And she was really thrilled to have food when she moved in, which was a nice touch. So theme number 2 is about belonging and inclusion. So at your right, there's a photograph taken by a participant of an older adult in the library in downtown Hamilton, and he looks to be perusing for a book. The library is a really important spot for participants. Not only could they access internet connectivity, they also went there to take out books, movies, a lot of resources, and it was also served as a meeting place for them as well. So in terms of independence and dignity, Frank, a participant, he talked a lot about the books he took out from the library, how they inspired him. And here's a quote about one such experience. So he said that he'd been browsing a book called Retire or Refire. So many times in the whole retirement thing, I noticed that if you could get something to do, that will give you a reason to get up and get out and, to fire you. So at the right of Frank's quote, there's a photograph taken by a participant of the same library branch from the previous photograph. And this is significant, and not only because there's an older gentleman who's doing some work on a stool. The participant chose to take a photograph of the community events board, which is a popular meeting place for participants and also for them to keep up to date as to what is happening in the community in downtown Hamilton. Obviously, this was taken pre-COVID. So in terms of physical and mental health, this was also something that participants spoke about as being important to them as they age, and how housing plays a role in this as well. So here's a quote from Nancy. "But if I get out and keep my mind going, if I keep learning new things, I can't lose what I'm learning, right? So hopefully when I get to a point where I may see a decline, hopefully I'll never get there." And community and culture is also very important in terms of connectivity and support for the participants. We're very fortunate to have a few Indigenous participants take part in the study. And Isabel talked a lot about her relationship with the local community and the cultural amenities that are available to her. So here's a quote from her. She said, "We've got an amazing First Nation cultural center. the Ottawa Indian Friendship Center. So that offers many, many programs, contacts, and cultural activities. And there's spectacular classes that are arranged in groups, dynamic groups, so that you can participate either with youth groups or senior citizen groups. So there's a combined effort to appreciate everyone's growth. And what was really significant about Isabel's interviews and her participation on her tablet was that she talked about aging a little differently than some of the other non-Indigenous participants, in the sense that it was holistic, community-based, and intergenerational. So theme number 3 has to do with COVID-19 and social isolation. As you probably remember, I started the research in the fall of 2019, and then COVID-19 hit in March 2020. And so many of the participants had their tablets when we went into lockdown and took this as an opportunity to document their experiences. So we were very lucky to be able to have this really rich data set. So Patricia, she talked about in her interview during COVID, when I interviewed her on the phone, said, "I feel very lonely here, even though I've met a lot of nice people, but I feel very lonely. But I didn't want to be here, but I know this is where I have to be for now." And there's a photograph on the left-hand side of the screen, which is taken in the lobby of one of the city housing buildings. And it's a series of printouts of COVID-related information, restrictions, and regulations that she took during COVID. So there's also another journal entry that was quite interesting about COVID. So this is from Patricia. She said, "With this virus, the seniors have become more isolated. Those of us who can't afford things such as TV and internet must resort to using free Wi-Fi on the first floor. Free Wi-Fi is what enables me to keep in touch with out-of-town friends and family and keep up to date with the news. So please don't take this away from me." So there was definitely a call to keep her connectivity. So in terms of the summary of the research findings, I've got 3 short slides that I'll go over. The first one has to do with COVID-19, social isolation, and technology. The second is experiencing homelessness in older age. And the third has to do with social and cultural participation. So in terms of COVID-19, social isolation, and technology, the pandemic definitely made participants more socially isolated than they were. And participants needed access to internet and Wi-Fi to stay connected, but this can be very costly, and not all participants were able to purchase this for their own apartments. And I did have reports back from participants who had relatives purchase Wi-Fi for them, access to internet, as well as religious organizations, so they could stay in touch during the first lockdown. So library closures due to COVID-19 also meant that participants didn't have access to Wi-Fi, nor did they have their normal meeting spots or access to books as they had pre-COVID. So there was free Wi-Fi in some of the buildings at the beginning of COVID, then it was taken away and then it was put back. So free Wi-Fi in building common spaces puts tenants at possible risk of COVID-19. So they did also talk about that once it was reinstated, they were a little bit worried about accessing those spaces. So in terms of experiencing homelessness in older age, many assume aging means more security and stability, but this is not always true. Increasing financial insecurity and an unstable housing market has led to periods of homelessness in older age for many participants. So homelessness and insecure housing requires people to navigate new challenging systems, which includes shelters, government assistance, and subsidized housing. And the last summary slide, which is social and cultural participation. Housing stability is important, but social connectedness is also critical to participants. So free programs and opportunities to socialize in city housing. An example of the programs are mobile medical services, craft clubs, exercise classes, etc., are important to participants. Participants took pride in organizing and participating in the community. In one particular building, I did fieldwork in 3 buildings in downtown Hamilton, but in one building, participants had banded together and they created their own local food bank, which placed an importance on fresh fruits and vegetables for the residents, but they did have to work to destigmatize the use of the food bank, but they were quite successful with this, but unfortunately it had to be closed because of the COVID regulations. And I'll pass it over to Jim.
Okay, that was great. Really amazing information that we received from everyone. The pictures add to the richness, and really, really appreciate all the efforts that people went to provide this information to us. And now is an opportunity to continue to participate with us, in fact. So we're really curious to know, did we get this right? And this is a common thing that we'll do in studies sometimes, where we'll go out and we'll do the data collection and we'll try and make sense of it all and synthesize it into some key themes as we have presented today. And then we come back and we say, did we get it right? And there are some related questions to that as well. In addition to did we get it right? Okay, so the additional questions, what do you think we got right? What specifically did we get right? What were the themes that you thought that really resonated with you, that we really hit the mark on? And because it's helpful to know that. We also acknowledge that we may have missed some things that you said or that you think are relevant that we haven't picked up on. And we'd really like to know what those are too. When we go to communicate with people at the city, for example, on how they can better meet people's needs, we would really be interested to know what the most important things are, because there are undoubtedly lots of things that you've got that you'd like to convey to the city. But if we can prioritize some of those things, then it can sometimes help in our communications with them. And then what do you think about using the technology that we asked you to use, the tablets in particular, and social media in research projects? Did you find this interesting? Did you find it helpful? Did it work for you? What were some of the challenges that you might have had? And what are the things that you really enjoyed about it? Just let us know. We're really interested to know that, because we want to know if we should use these kinds of tools again in future research. It's going to help us as we go forward. And so if you'd like to convey your thoughts on any of these questions, please contact Michelle, and you've got her email here. It's wyndham@mcmaster.ca. So WYNDHAMM, that's two M's, wyndham@mcmaster.ca. And yeah, that's how you can provide your feedback. We're really looking forward to hearing from you, because again, this is a project where you are the experts. We really need your information. We're really interested in what you've got to say, and you're going to help us a lot by telling us whether we got it right and the ways in which we didn't.
And we also want to express our deepest gratitude for the participants, and thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your lives with us over so many mediums. It was really great to have interviews, to meet you in person pre-COVID, and then your diaries through the tablets and the photographs and videos. It was a really rich data set. So thank you for sharing so much with us. And we also wanted to thank Brenda and Kelly from the City of Hamilton for supporting this project and giving us access to participants in city housing, and also the central branch of the Hamilton Public Library, who also helped with recruitment.
And finally, I want to thank you on behalf of an initiative that I lead called the Canadian Housing Evidence Collaborative, who provided some of the support to this project. And we're interested in trying to advance the issue of making sure that all Canadians have housing that they can afford and that meets their needs. Thanks again.